Hi, I'm Jackie Neapole, the Executive Director of the Canadian Research Institute for the Advancement of Women. Thank you to Canada for ceding its time to us in civil society. This is a joint statement with my colleague Bonnie Douglas from the Canadian Coalition of Women in Engineering, Science, Trade and Technology. There are two interconnected areas we wish to speak to. One is the meaningful participation of women's rights organizations and civil society, and the other is strengthened accountability measures. We are very concerned about the revitalization process taking place under the backdrop of a liquidity crisis in the UN. With the growing anti-feminist and anti-women's rights movements, together with overt affronts to multilateralism and its institutions, the creep of corporate power and influence, we wish to reiterate that any changes to the Commission on the Status of Women must be made with the determination to strengthen it rather than reduce its budget and impact. Advancing women's rights must remain the priority for the CSW. The knowledge, contribution, and meaningful participation of women's rights and civil society organizations are necessary for the effective implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Over the past decade, the space for feminist civil society organizations to observe, participate, and hold member states accountable in the negotiations of the agreed conclusions at CSW has been shrinking, and it continues to get smaller. Increasingly, our participation seems more symbolic, and we are given fewer options to participate or observe the negotiations, and there's very little space in the official program for NGOs to speak and intervene. There could be more interactive approaches to the format of the ministerial segments and roundtables to include participation from civil society. As part of the review of CSW, it should compare the role that civil society organizations play in other UN processes and evaluate whether the CSW is following best practices. There may be some benefits to holding the CSW in different locations rather than here in New York, but no matter what, it is important for it to have a permanent home, staff, and budget, so it is not dependent on rotating annual sponsorship from member states where it is hosted. We do not want to risk that the CSW falls victim to a growing backlash and goes out of mode and loses its permanence in the UN system. The CSW should also consider adding in a third team, an emerging priority issue that is decided in the prior session to respond to new issues, rather than waiting for the 5-year program of work to be developed. Finally, the work of CSW should focus more on action to keep it in the spirit of the BPFA. There should be accountability mechanisms in place to monitor and evaluate actions related to the agreed conclusions. There should be greater emphasis on sharing best practices and monitoring implementation, resourcing, ambition, and actionability as the key outcomes. Thank you.